Hey, old souls. I thought I would pop in today and do a May 2020 astrology preview report. And it's interesting because really the entirety of 2020 is dominated by an energy that's happening the entire year. And I went really in depth with that in my January 2020 video. And so it's almost like listen to that, and then all of this is just additional information on top. So we're and to sum that up, we're basically still strongly in the heavy Capricorn energy of Jupiter and Pluto at late degrees Capricorn, and then Saturn's right there with it. So it's technically Saturn's like 1 degree Aquarius, but it's still all of that is still very, and it's for Saturn is sort of involved, but it's basically about to retrograde. So even though it's and I mentioned this in other videos too, Saturn is getting up to 1 degrees Aquarius. So I think it went in there in March. I think March 24th was it, and then went 0 degrees, 1 degrees Aquarius. Will shortly be retrograding, and then goes back into Capricorn in July. And so technically, yes, it's in Aquarius, it's in a different sign. We have felt a little bit of a shift, and it's not really in any way not involved in that conjunction, that late Capricorn conjunction still. So, yes, technically in a different sign, but really the Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter conjunction is pretty consistent the entirety of 2020. And all of that energy has to do with massively redoing, upheavaling structures in a big way, as we are seeing. So a lot has been said about these huge structures that are being kind of redone in the world on a collective level, but I will also remind you that these structures are internal, and so a lot of what that Jupiter and Pluto specifically, but then kind of Saturn's adding its heat into the mix with it all too. It's officialness, it's manifestation. Saturn's really all about this is real now. This is in third dimensional reality now. That's what Saturn does. It makes it very here, in your face, apparent. The reality check. That's kind of a nice sum up of Saturn's energy. And it's adding that to that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which has everything to do with if this structure does not withstand, a massive shakeup, then it's not a good structure. So everything that if you do this to it and it falls apart, that's what's being undone from our entire collective, and then also from each of us personally. And there's a lot of stuff that was kind of held together by duct tape, both in big societal governmental ways and then a lot of personal stuff. And so all of the things that are very insecure and very shaky and very, unstable right now, I know it's a terrifying thing to think, but acknowledge that those things are done. Like they were the things held together by duct tape. It might have been gold-plated duct tape, but it was still duct tape. There's a lot of modern society that is really based on a lot of not solid for your soul, like soul solid stuff. We're not talking about like, the stuff that your grandparents told you and it's lasted, 100 years. That's a different type of salad. Pluto and Jupiter, this has a lot to do with like, what does your soul need? Not want, not crave, core need. You are on a soul mission for growth, and Pluto and Jupiter are reminding you to not get off track. And most of society has been off track for many hundreds of years, and you could say it's been off for millennia, to kind of like go all the way back to Atlantis time period. That was sort of the last time that we were on path, aka the last golden age, aka that is a big cycle in and of itself. So it's not even like off path means you did anything wrong. It's just humanity grows, takes an in breath, and then takes an out breath, and takes an in breath and takes an out breath. And this actually has a lot to do with huge cycles like the Mayan calendar, the 26,000 year cycle, the different ages, and on and on and on. That's kind of a whole big topic. But anyways, when I say off path, when I say held together by duct tape, even that has a purpose. Even that is a beautiful experience on this human journey called life. But in this moment, in this particular moment of 2020, we are being asked strongly to remove all of that gold-plated duct tape and get down to the core essentials of what your soul came here to do. And most of us, our soul did not come here to, happily enjoy our 9-to-5 desk job. Just saying. But anyways, all that being aside, so that's the backdrop of the entirety of 2020, and I just want to make that super, super clear. So that's the year, and then now let's just way narrow the focus for just May. So all of that's still happening, but now on top of that, specifically just for May, here's the stuff going on. So May is a very interesting month. There's no month of 2020 that's not interesting, but May is a very interesting month because the main energy of May is almost to a ridiculous degree this idealization of love and romance. And this could go many different ways, so I'll go into many of them. But there are a few energies happening in May, and all of them really tie into this same theme. So what's happening in May? First off, very, very first off, which actually doesn't quite fit into this theme. There's two themes of May, but I'll do them in chronological order. Why not? So very first thing happening in May that is worth noting on a big collective scale is that the nodes are going to be shifting into a different sign. So what are the nodes? The nodes are, so the nodes of the moon, the north node and the south node. What they are for each person individually in your chart, so your natal chart, this permanent part of you specifically, what the nodes show is this huge journey that your soul is on. And I've been meaning to make a nodes video for a while. I'll just tap into it here, and then soon enough I will be making my nodes videos, because I was going to go through each of the signs in each of the houses, because it's a huge part of your chart. It's a huge part of your soul's mission to really deeply understand the nodes. The south node in a natal chart, and we're talking natal here first so I can make it make sense to you, and then we'll talk about what the collective nodes mean in a second here. But natal, you have south node and you have north node. And the south node shows this conglomeration of themes that your soul has been doing for many different lifetimes, many lifetimes. And it's really this pile of energy that your soul has gained some amount of wisdom in. Enough wisdom that, since the huge overarching goal of any soul is growth, you've gained enough wisdom there that it is now time to move into a different realm. But that south node is your foundation. It's the stuff that you have earned. It's your solid, I have been doing this for lifetimes. I got wisdom in this. These are the gifts that I'm bringing in this lifetime. And it takes some decades sometimes to remember that these are your gifts, but they are your gifts. So a lot of times the way that I see it in clients is, you're born, you have 20 or 30 years where you're not really even playing any part of your nodes game. You're just kind of in societal, whatever people tell you you're supposed to be mode. And then around your first Saturn return, when you're around 29, 30, you wake up to your thing. You find your thing. You're like, oh, this is my thing. I love this. I'm really good at this. This is totally what I'm supposed to be doing. Excuse me. That's your south node. That's oftentimes people's south node. And it feels like you came home, because you have, you've been doing this for lifetimes, that particular theme. And what I mean by theme is the sign and the house that your south node is shows what you have been exploring as a soul for many different lifetimes. And this is not like you were, Bobby Joe in Columbus, Ohio in 1849. If you are listening to an astrologer that's telling you that, unless they're just really psychic and that's kind of their thing, that's not what astrology does. Astrology is not that. Astrology is themes. Astrology is archetypes. Astrology is soul missions. Don't get lost in those details. Those details actually don't really matter. Anyways, just a side comment there. So anyways, when you're in your early 30s, late 20s, and you found your thing, oftentimes that is your south node. There are the few random people that I have found that you actually even discovered your north node by your early 30s, but incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. If you're someone who had a Kundalini awakening at 14, maybe you are at your north node when you are in your early 30s, but probably not. And I say this because it's very important to acknowledge that energy is your south node. So, again, kind of in this generalization of what I've seen in many different clients, you're born, you're kind of lost in the fog, you find your south node in your early 30s. You do your south node until your Uranus return or your second Saturn return, like midlife crisis kind of moments. Because basically you've like, yeah, I'm really good at this, but now I'm kind of bored with it because there's not a lot of growth in it anymore. But it's very important that you first remember it because it's your foundation. And then when you're kind of in your 40s and 50s, and again, very generalized timelines, the ages can be different. But what I found with a lot of different clients is like in your mid 40s, early 50s, that's around the time that you, for the first real true time, actually really start orienting yourself towards your north node. And it's because you have already found the foundation of your south node, and then you have gotten full. You have remembered that you already know that, and then now your soul is craving more. And so then the north node shows the journey that your soul has never taken before. It's a new journey. There's so much growth in your north node energy, which one will always feel very exciting and promising, and two will always feel confusing because you don't have a pattern for it yet. And so that's the energy of a nodal system, south node to north node journey. Okay, we all have that natally. We all have some version of that. Everyone's got a north node and a south node in their chart, which that is your specific lifetime journey. Now, let's talk about what it means collectively. So collectively, we all also have a north node and a south node at any given time. So these kind of move around the chart every year and a half. So for each year and a half, collectively we have, so to give an example, for the last year and a half, we have collectively had the south node in Capricorn and the north node in Cancer. And now that is shifting, May 6th, this is shifting, and the nodes go backwards, so that the north node is now going to be in Gemini, and the south node is now going to be in Sagittarius. So what does it mean when the collective nodes are in Gemini and Sagittarius? So let's go into what it meant for South Node Capricorn and North Node Cancer, the energy that we've been in for the past year and a half. So the South Node collectively, you can think about the collective as like one entity. So the South Node for the collective being Capricorn this past year and a half meant that our comfort zone was either strong hierarchy or deep melancholy, to go like for the full extremes of Capricorn. There's a lot of, it's up to me, I got to get my shit together, I can't rely on anyone, I've got this huge goal that I'm trying to accomplish. I must do my, Stephen Forrest calls it your great work. Oh man, I'm forgetting the exact words, but basically Capricorn is like your masterpiece. That's what Capricorn ideally is aiming anyone towards. Capricorn archetypal energy is pushing you to your absolute limit so you can achieve something that you are amazed that you can even achieve. So that would be our South Node, which means that many of us tapped into this really strong business energy, get your shit together energy, strong maturity energy. And also, the collective in general was very kind of heavy and a bit like the world's on their shoulders, kind of this just almost, there's a certain amount of just like defeatist energy if Capricorn kind of goes into the negative. which we also saw in the collective. So for the past year and a half, that's kind of been our comfort zone, because the South Node is sort of your comfort zone. So everyone was really tapping into that, especially if you by chance also have natally South Node Capricorn, North Node Cancer. And so the goal of the collective for the past year and a half, the North Node, this Cancer North Node energy that we are just now leaving, was collectively we're all trying to figure out what home is, what comfort is, what nurturing is, how to just feel safe, what your tribe is. And it's almost, can I say ridiculous? I mean, it's too weird of a word. Almost just like literal. It's almost literal what happened with the North Node in Cancer. And at these last, couple of months of it is we are all literally told to stay home. The collective massively embodied that North Node in Cancer energy. And the shadow of Cancer too, of being massively afraid. And so we were exploring the fear, we were exploring the safety, we were exploring what home meant, we were exploring what tribe meant, because everyone kept kind of, you get to hang out with 10 people, and you get to hang out with 2 people, and maybe you can see your parents, and maybe you can't, and kind of this really intense coming into this, who are my absolute required people to have in my life, because that's very Cancerian, your tribe. But not your friend tribe, your people you will call in a crisis tribe. And so collectively, that's very much what we've been exploring, really the entire year and a half. But like anything, once it gets to that kind of last degrees, it's almost just in your face. And so that's kind of what we have been doing. So we have been South Node collectively trying to leave this really intense authoritarian, 20-year plan, go to your day job, do nose to the grindstone Capricorn energy. And we have been trying to move into this softer, gentler, more intuitive, more in your own world, more family-oriented, more home-oriented Cancer North Node. So now our collective is on a different journey. And this journey shifts every year and a half. So it's not like this is some once-in-a-lifetime thing. But it is very interesting to just kind of notice that this is playing in the background whenever the nodes shift signs collectively. So what is our next year and a half journey? So the next year and a half, the South Node will be in Sagittarius and the North Node will be in Gemini. So in that so the South Node collectively oftentimes shows up more of the negatives of what it can be. And it can go both ways, but basically I'll give both. So the South Node in Sagittarius, what this means for the next year and a half is that collectively, the collective as an entity that you can choose to play with or not, you can dive into this collective, or you can kind of be your own separate thing, not involved in this collective, but this is the collective energy. The collective energy for the next year and a half is going to have this comfort zone, this sort of natural talent, aka stuck in rut kind of pitfall, of Sagittarius energy, which okay, best way, the thing that can really potentially show is for the next year and a half, we will all be very motivated to find our truth, speak our truth, stand in our own wisdom, stand in our own intuition, because that's also a strong Sagittarius trait, and basically just we're going to do our own thing. Sagittarius is very much, you cannot cage a Sagittarius. And I mean that archetypally. I mean, it does fit with sun sign Sagittarius as well, but we're talking archetypes here. I'm always only talking archetypes, just to remind people. So collectively, there's some amount of freedom that we will all be really wanting to claim again. But remember, it's the South Node, so potentially too much so. And then if you go too far in the direction, so that really intense sticking point, the part that we're all trying to evolve out of as a collective, is basically basically the absolute ignoring of anyone else's truth. Shadow side of Sagittarius is I'm right, you're wrong, and I don't give a fuck if you're some. I don't care if that hurts you. It's like my right is right and your wrong is wrong. Which can be, I mean, Sagittarius to its absolute worst detriment is the Crusades, you know, the Inquisition, holy wars, someone, you know, completely like not talking to a friend anymore because you don't like their politics or you don't like their philosophies on life. Like really divisive energy. And it doesn't have to be divisive, but I'm just saying, like, that's collectively our next arena that we will be playing with for this next year and a half is collective truths. And learning how you can have your truth, and it's very important for you to stand in your truth, and someone else can have their truth, and it does not dismiss your own, and you are not dismissing theirs. That's sort of like the realm that we're going to be playing in, these beliefs and these truths realm, but like core things, core beliefs, core truths, your religion, your spirituality, the philosophy that you believe. Kind of intense stuff. I'm not going to say that, well, I won't say that. It's going to be great. It's going to be fine. So sum up, speak your truth, but be kind. And then what we are moving into, the North Node, the collective North Node in Gemini, means that collectively, this energy that we will be discovering and playing in and has the potential to help us grow is to learn how to have fun, to learn how to not take things so seriously, to learn how to play again, maybe even like bring the jester back since we've completely killed the jester in our collective right now. So humor and poking fun and teasing and playful just curiosity again. Leaving this realm of dogma, your own and the collective. Remember, it's not just like other people's dogmas are the problem. We all have our own dogmas too. And then we are moving into this uncharted, well, collectively, you know, we do this every 18 years. So it's not like, I mean, 18 years ago, we were also in a North Node in Gemini. So it's not like this is the first time that we're ever in North Node in Gemini. But I will say it does often feel like this energy that we're all pulled towards, and also feels a little bit like, how do we do this again? Or what are we doing here? So there's kind of this uncertainty, but at the same time, this collective pull. That's where the door is open. That's where the energy is flowing, is to go towards that. And so that energy, again, is to be more open, to be more curious, to have more fun, and to not take things so seriously, which is a very interesting challenge currently, since many things people are like, you know, if you start joking around about anything at all that's happening right now, it's like, send him to the gallows, you know, this how dare you not take this seriously. That's the mission. That's the challenge. That's the new energy. So that'll be an interesting journey to go down into with it all. There was one other thing I was going to say about that. Oh, and then of course, so the other thing about that is for anyone with strong Gemini energy in your chart, especially currently if you have, so in this next 6-month time period, so basically from like May until fall of 2020, if you have any planets in late degree Gemini, planets or points, so any of your planets, any of your angles, any of your own nodes, if you have any of that in late degrees Gemini, that means that your natal energy, so you know, that particular planet's energy, like let's say you have like your sun in late degrees Gemini and your ascendant in late degrees Gemini, just to give 2 examples, then that means that for these next 6 months, and I say that because that's kind of the orb for, you know, if you split up the year and a half time period that it's in Gemini, it's like, you know, mid to late degrees, mid degrees, early degrees are these 6-month time periods for it. So for this next 6-month time period, if you have, let's just say, your sun and your ascendant in late degrees Gemini, that means that your sun, the way that you naturally radiate your energy, is exactly what the collective needs. And if your ascendant is Gemini, then that means your ascendant, your learned personality, who you think you're supposed to be out in the world, your natural social cues, is exactly what the world needs. And so oftentimes someone who has their sun or their ascendant in Gemini is going to be very interested in new knowledge, is going to be very playful and silly and curious and maybe childlike and innocent, and not innocent and like naive, well, potentially, but more just innocent, just not needing to be some jaded, serious person about it all, just wanting to explore and try new things and not hold anything too tightly. And so that's kind of the cool thing about having a natal planet anywhere near that collective north node, is that it just naturally, like who you are naturally, or that particular planet. So I gave the sun and ascendant, but like let's say your Mars is there, then the way that you show your power is technically what is wanted in the world in that moment. Or if you have your moon there, the way that you express your emotions is wanted in the world right now. So it's almost like there's this the world just wants what you have in this very fun way. So whenever I'm doing a chart reading for someone and the collective north node is passing over some natal planet of theirs, I always say, go show this, go do this, go out in the world and help people do this more, because that is exactly what the collective is really desperately craving and needing guidance in this moment. So that's part one of the month. Okay, that was actually we're now on May 6th. I'm trying to, not have this be a massively long video, but it seems like I'm incapable of doing that. So anyways, object number 1 of the month, North Node switches into Gemini, South Node switches into Sagittarius. Next big thing of the month, which goes into my what I was initially talking about, how May is this month of romance. And I say that with a little bit of a wink, because it's like, not romance in the way that it's like, oh, I found my one. You might think that, but don't fall into that pit. So let me dive into what I'm talking about here. So next big thing happening May of 2020 is Venus goes retrograde on May 13th. And it goes retrograde, and it'll be retrograding throughout the entire sign of Gemini. It goes retrograde on May 13th at 21 degrees Gemini, and then it goes direct June 25th at 5 degrees Gemini. So it'll be retrograding throughout the entire sign of Gemini, which we were just talking about Gemini, so there's kind of an additional bit of that, even though it's collective nodes versus transiting Venus. But let me now explain a bit more about what Venus retrograde is, because all retrogrades are very misunderstood, I find. What Venus retrograde, what any retrograde is, means that particular planet is its closest distance to Earth. So it literally has more. Here on Earth, we are literally receiving more of that energy. That's what a retrograde is. It's when that particular planet is its closest distance to Earth. And you could think about it as, when a planet is the closest that it is to Earth, it has this like funnel of energy. So, we naturally have this much of a funnel to receive the energy, and then when that planet goes retrograde, it actually is giving us this much. So we almost have to like kind of open and widen in order to channel all of that energy. Otherwise, a lot of it goes spilling off the sides, and that's where people get all kind of down the wrong rabbit hole with it all. So any retrograde at all, doesn't matter the planet, you need to chill and you need to open and receive. It's all very receptive time. The doing time is much better when the planet is direct. When it is retrograde, it's all about receiving, rethinking, redoing, reviewing, all of that energy. You're just receiving. You're just taking it in and reprocessing it all. So for Venus, when Venus is retrograde, we have more Venus energy. So what that means is when you naturally are receiving Venus's energy, Venus gives you is the energy of what you love and what is enjoyable for you. Abundance, money, sensual enjoyments. Venus is very earthy. It's wanting to just be here and now and enjoy itself. It rules Taurus and Libra. So these very either like relational oriented sign, Libra, or physical pleasure oriented sign, Taurus. And so when you have more Venus, there's more of this want for pleasure as well as relationship. And so when it's retrograde, then you have potentially too much want for pleasure and too much want for relationship, aka you're not really seeing it totally clearly. So what does this mean? So when Venus is retrograde, that means that it's an energy that is so the time period, so the 40 days that Venus is retrograde every year and a half, is a beautiful time to come back in, review your relationships, review your self-worth, review how you actually genuinely feel about what you want and what you love, and just clean it all up. Just clean up that relationship gunk, clean up the self-worth gunk. It's a great time to just come into you. So that's it at its best. What often happens during a Venus retrograde is you fall in love with everything. And when it's done being retrograde, you sometimes take the beer goggles off and go, eek, thought I really loved that, but as it turns out, that wasn't really all that great of a fit. So classic Venus retrograde advice is don't get married. Don't buy that $2,000 pair of shoes. Chill. Just chill on the things. Know that you have tons of love energy in you. Tons of sensual enjoyment energy in you. Don't eat cookies every single night. Enjoy yourself, but very easy to gain 50 pounds during a Venus retrograde. Just kind of acknowledge that this is the safest thing to do with the Venus retrograde is cap what you currently have. Just cap it. And then take the love that you already have and refine it and get rid of the stuff that's already kind of lost its shine, so that you can come out of a Venus retrograde with this deep, solid pureness of what you want, what you love, who you love, and why you're valuable. That's solid what Venus retrogrades are genuinely trying to teach you. And now, as we are on this topic, I made a little list of some nice things, my Venus retrograde etiquette, if you will, which I teach people in my course. So I thought I'd just read them for you real quick, just so you can have even more information about what to do with this Venus retrograde. So, ideally, not a great time to start any new super close relationships, and this is with romantic, friend, or business partner, because, again, like I said, especially, after Venus goes direct, the closeness, you might not really be as close as you think, or they might not really be quite as amazing as you thought. That's classic Venus retrograde. So careful who you become friends with, start dating, decide to marry, and it's not even like you're going to do it wrong. It's just you're going to have a skewed perspective. You're going to have a mass, 3 different versions of rose-colored glasses on top of what you're looking at. And so you can't really see it clearly. So if you start dating someone during a Venus retrograde, it's okay, but just be aware that your final decision on that person shouldn't be until after Venus goes direct, just so that you can be clear-headed about it. And at the same time, if you acknowledge that you're not going to be making the most amazing life choices during this time, and you're okay with that, this is a great time to just enjoy yourself. I mean, go date the random person that you met at the coffee shop and fully acknowledge that it's probably not going to work out, but you get to just like be in a love bubble for 40 days. So, I'm just saying, I'm giving you advice, but like, you don't have to do the full right way of it. You can fully acknowledge, okay, this isn't going to work, but I'm at least going to enjoy myself and have a great time doing it. Just the same way that you can like, binge on a pizza and ice cream movie night. It's not like you're never allowed to do that. So, but just give yourself the clarity that that's what you're doing. That's really all I'm suggesting. Okay. Next item on the Venus retrograde etiquette. Take time to really feel into what matters to you and see if you need to switch up things in your life so that you can get your priorities straight. So again, like clean up your values, clean up what you really want. What do you really, really, really want? You will have an extra dose of that right now, which is why it's so useful to really pay attention to that. So if you were sort of fuzzy and like, I don't really know what I want, or I'm not really sure, if you just sit with that during these 40 days of Venus retrograde, you'll have a lot more clarity on that because you have more of that coming into you. So take advantage of that. Okay, next item, cleaning up any stuckness or miscommunications you have in your current relationships. Beautiful thing to do during Venus retrogrades because, again, there's extra love. There's a bit more rose-colored glasses, lovey-dovey energy. So if you're having a battle with a best friend or you and your partner aren't really doing all that great, it's sort of like you have a little softness around the rough edges during this time. So it's a great time to have a tough conversation so that you can really clear the air and get back into a healthy space with the relationship. It's also a great time to reach out to old friends or business partners if you've connected with them in the past and redo or finish up anything that you started with them before. So classic retrograde anything energy is, don't start stuff. But the loophole to that is you can restart something. So let's say that you and a friend 2 years ago started some business adventure and it didn't really work out or you kind of shelved it or something. And you're sort of thinking about starting it back up again. Beautiful. That is a beautiful thing to do during a Venus retrograde, and it will actually stick more because you're redoing it. Redoing anything is actually a wonderful thing to do during a retrograde. Same with if, maybe 3 years ago you broke up with someone and it's the fire is kindling again recently. If you're redoing the relationship, oddly enough, it actually has more of a chance to stick during a Venus retrograde. So those are some little loopholes in the in the logic there, but that is pretty true. That if you're redoing something, it actually is stronger. If you're getting married for the second time, also a good thing to do during Venus retrograde. Okay, if star, very important one coming up. Even if you are totally in love with a new project or friend or something that you just feel is the best thing ever, wait. If it's new, if it's brand new, wait. If you still feel the same wonderful glowing love for them after Venus goes direct, then go for it. But don't make big decisions about anything that you love that is new during a Venus retrograde. Again, I had already mentioned that. Not a great time to buy new Venus items. So like clothes or comfort items or beauty items or furniture or stuff like that. For the same logic of, you're just gonna be viewing it with really strong rose-colored glasses. So, you might totally fall in love with like the lime green zebra print couch during Venus retrograde, but then after it goes direct, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? So just prepping you that's sort of the reason why it's like caution on what you buy, especially if it has something to do with comfort and beauty and enjoyment. For same logic that you might not really feel the same way afterwards. And then finally, as with all retrogrades, great time to meditate and ask questions of your guides, your higher self, and just journal in general. Because again, you're receiving more of that energy than you normally would. And just adding to the mix here, this is also happening in Gemini, like I mentioned. And so if you know your chart, whatever house Gemini is in, you're having Venus retrograde go through that house. So I guess I could very quickly go through each of the houses here. Basically, all of the same, everything I just told you, except now it's going to be in a very specific area of your life on top of just in general. So let's say that you have your first house in Gemini and this Venus retrograde is going over it. This is a phenomenal time for you to massively come back in and decide who you want to be. First house, how you see yourself. You're redoing, you're reevaluating, you're re-loving how you see yourself. So positives can really get solid on your self-esteem again. Negatives, you might become a bit narcissistic. So just clear all that out too. If you have Gemini in your second house, get very, very clear on what you want and what you own, and maybe clear up any weirdness you got going on with like your self-worth and money and abundance issues. Third house in Gemini, rethink what you know, what you are learning, what you take as fact, because it might not actually be the case. And at the same time, it might also be a wonderful time to redo something that you started before. So maybe you started some random class on something that you thought, like you took a photography class and you didn't finish it or something. Beautiful time to refinish that and finish up that learning. That's what third house is all about, how you think and how you learn. If you have Gemini in the fourth house, everything I was talking about with the relationship stuff is particularly important for you, especially with your close family members. So this can also involve like your partner, but it can big time involve, your parents or your aunts and uncles or your kids to some extent, whoever's physically living in your house. That's probably the main people that you're going to be reviewing your relationships with. Fifth house, great time to review your relationship very specifically with if you have your own business. And then also you can throw in, the fifth house is an interesting house because it's basically anything you create. Anything you enjoy and just birth into the world. So it's your small business, it's your art, it's your book you just wrote, it's your literal children. All of those things are fifth house. And so that whole Venus retrograde going through that area means that you were at your best, completely reviewing what you're doing with your business, reviewing your relationship with your children, reviewing your relationship to fun itself, and at the same time, make sure that you're not starting new things with your business or, for the first time doing something with your book or whatever you're painting or something. And it's not even like you can't write or you can't paint or you can't do your fun stuff. It's just if you're wanting it to stick, just wait on that. Go into the enjoyment of it. And with the Venus retrograde in your fifth house, you'll have lots of energy to enjoy yourself. So it's almost like a free pass to just have fun. Like, do different things with it all. It's Gemini. Go explore. Do something different. Be curious. Be playful with it. If Gemini is in your sixth house, you will be reviewing potentially your relationships with your coworkers or your employees. And then also just with your daily habits in general. How can you bring more love and beauty and fun and enjoyment to your daily activities? Add more Venus energy to all of your daily stuff. If it's in your seventh house, you'll probably very specifically be dealing with your actual partner, romantic partner. Seventh house can also be business partners as well, but tends to be very solidly relationships. Eighth house, you're dealing with any trust issues you might have. Venus retrograde, you have more Venus energy in your eighth house, which would be triggering. Eighth house, everything with eighth house has to do with like pushing you to your limits and triggering you. So with Venus there's like potentially this wonderful energy of you have more love for that part. You have more love for the parts of you that were triggering you. So it's a great time to do some shadow work with it. It might be able to be, it's more accessible to you potentially. You have a nicer way of doing it. Or, if you have a therapist, great time to have them help you with it too, because they might be able to just soften the edges around all the really tough parts of some big stuff that happened to you in your early life. So great time for shadow work if it's in if you have Gemini in the 8th house, during this Venus retrograde. And then also, just all of your trust issues with love at all. Like if you're really jaded about relationships, you're jaded about a particular partner, or you just struggle with trusting people, just meditate on that. You might have some breakthroughs with that if you really own up to it. If your 9th house is Gemini, then this Venus retrograde potentially will either make you fall in love with your beliefs and have, benefits, really being able to dive into your intuition, connect with your intuition. And negative can be that you are far too dogmatic, and so you're kind of questioning your whole, like you're a bit too devil's advocate with everyone else, where it's like, I'm right and you're wrong and I'm going to just like mock you for it. So try not to do that. But the potential for the good potential for the Venus retrograde in the 9th house is you get really solid on what your values are with what you believe, and just kind of like able to tap into that, your own intuition more. You fall in love with your own intuition more, which can always be a lovely thing. Venus retrograde in the 10th house, which means you have Gemini in the 10th house. I hope I'm saying Gemini. This is all for Gemini. So 10th house Gemini, 9th house Gemini, 8th house Gemini. It's all Gemini. If you have the 10th house in Gemini for this Venus retrograde, then that means that you are really questioning and reviewing and relooking at, ideally, again, when I say reviewing, that's like what you ideally could be doing with this. You could be doing all kinds of other terrible things with it, but ideally, you are reviewing your career and how the world sees you, which Venus retrograde in the 10th house can be kind of a big deal, because you're really reevaluating, do I actually want this? Do I actually want the reputation that I have? Do I actually want the career that I have? Do I like being a leader in this field? Do I actually want to be a leader in that other field? Do I actually not even want to be a leader at all? All of these things come up with it. And so at its best, you can get really clear on what you want in your career and what you want the world to see you as. And at its worst, you can get kind of too in love with your own image and post far too much on social media. Far too many selfies on social media. Negatives of Venus retrograde in Gemini in the 10th house. 11th house Gemini for this Venus retrograde shows that the energy that you're needing to kind of review and evaluate is a lot of your friend stuff. So maybe there's some friendships that have kind of gone sour that you could come back to and have the hard conversation, fix it all up, find the love again, and at the same time reevaluate your big mission. Like 11th house is these hopes and dreams that you hope your life to be, and so if your Venus is going through that, it's like, is that really what you want? Is that really, this? And it's not like, oh, I hope I'm CEO of my random firm. Yeah, I guess it could be if you really wanted that. But it's more of like, I one day hope to like live on a farm, or like I one day hope to save the world, or every homeless person is fed and clothed, or like that's kind of 11th house stuff, like these really idealistic utopian visions that you have for your life and for your collective, for your own little bubble of the collective. So the Venus retrograde is asking you to really sink into that. Like, what are the true values of your big mission? Who are your true friends? Can you really count on these people? And the negatives are you kind of like get lost. Well, I guess there's not really, the only negative with that is like you maybe you fall in love with one of your friends, maybe watch out for that. But like for the most part, even if you've got some really, rose, like your big visions are rose-colored glasses to begin with, so you can't really like overdo that unless you're wanting it done now. Obviously, that's not great, but maybe you could almost even like push it, like use that rose-colored glasses vision that you've got with this Venus retrograde on your big visions, if you have Gemini in the 11th house, to go even further with it. Like, what is your big vision? And maybe how can your friends help you do that? And then finally, Gemini in the 12th, this Venus retrograde at its best can really unearth some deep, unconscious patterns that you've got going on. Excuse me, especially about love, Venus, and potentially also just like the 12th house is your collective unconscious, like your little chunk of the collective unconscious that you came here to heal, and has a lot to do with family karma as well. So with Venus going through that, it has a potential for you to really sink in and maybe, find the love for your, like grandfather that you didn't really like very much, or like there's been a family pattern that's been going on for many generations and you finally like make peace with it. So it potentially has a huge opportunity for you for these 40 days during it. Negatives of Venus retrograde in the 12th, you completely fall in love with like some random homeless dude and then marry him and then wake up on June 26th when Venus goes direct and go, oh my God, that was a terrible idea. So like Venus in, like if you have Gemini in the 12th, like you specifically don't fall in love with anyone. You will go off the deep end with it. Not that I would know. So anyways, those are the Venus retrograde energies to be paying attention to. And Venus retrograde is from May 13th through June 25th. So it's going into June quite a bit. But I obviously thought that would be important for May because it's beginning in May. So just to add to that, romantic energy that can go either really good or really good if you're cleaning it up and you're reviewing it, really bad if you're starting a brand new project because your rose-colored glasses are just off the charts. There's actually two energies that are like doubling down on all of that. One of them is this Venus retrograde is going retrograde. So like on the 13th. It's going retrograde exactly square Neptune, which means that it's just, not only are they rose-colored glasses, but they're like foggy rose-colored glasses. like the idealism and inability to see the full reality of something is so intense that it's like almost impossible to give yourself any sort of clarity. So you're kind of just floating along in the fuzzy rainbows stream of it all, which can be lovely if you're doing healing work and can be really bad if you're like trying to start a new relationship. So 1, squaring Neptune, and 2, the very next day, so Venus goes retrograde on May 13th. The very next day, May 14th, Mars goes into Pisces, which means that our collective power is in our ability to imagine and live in our own little bubble of reality. So again, adding so much power to our spiritual healing that can be done in this time with our relationships, with our values, with our self-worth, and can absolutely cause havoc if you are in any way trying to make big, real-life adult decisions about your, like your relationships or, what you physically own or strong values. If you're newly doing it, like not a great time to buy a house, not a great time to buy expensive furniture or expensive clothes, horrible time to start a relationship, bad time to make any like big new thing happen with a new friend, like you move in together or you start a business together. If it's a new person, if it's new, again, like I was saying, the weird little loophole is if you've already been in a relationship with this person, if you already tried that business a couple years ago, you have a bit of a free pass during a Venus retrograde. But even with that, I would still be a little bit cautious. So wanted to mention those two energies. It doesn't actually change a lot of the story of what I just told you with all the stuff going around the house. Like when I went through Gemini with all the houses, it's just adding like 1,000 times more oomph to all of that. To have the Venus retrograde initially be squaring Neptune, and then to have Mars go into Pisces shortly thereafter. Okay, and then I will say... and I should also mention, if you are wanting to use this Venus retrograde to its fullest and knock out those shitty belief systems you have about relationships and really get deep into your self-worth, I have a relationship course that I've been teaching for about a year now and has been entirely prompted by people just asking me to share my own journey of my relationship journey, which is as a natal Venus in retrograde, massive rose-colored glasses when I was younger and did all the things wrong, so have much experience on how to guide you through a lot of the pitfalls of relationships and move you into who you are truly and how to love yourself in order to find your actual true resonant divine partnership. If that interests you at all, my relationship course will start the day that Venus goes retrograde or near it. So it'll start on the 14th. Sorry, actually the day afterwards. And the registration for my relationship course closes on May 13th. It's a 12-week program. I keep adding to it. So 4 months, solid, knock it out. 3 months, I can do math. And really takes you on the exact journey that I went on of zero self-worth, how to do the shadow work, how to love yourself, how to have boundaries, how to have communication, how to call in your perfect partner, how to keep your partner once you've found them. If that interests you at all, you can find out more on my website, soulmatmandalas.com, and I'll also have a link to it at the bottom. Okay, and then going to one final piece of the May 2020 astrology. So I was mentioning that this whole month that you're just kind of wrapped up in some lovely Neptunian Venus retrograde bubble that is nowhere near having your feet on the ground. And there's one little moment, well, I guess let's just say there's about a week and a half of a moment that you have a tad bit more clarity, which still not a great time to make decisions because it's Venus retrograde. But I will just give you this little moment of like, if you really got to do something important and you got to have your feet on the ground for some part of May, there's a little bubble that's a bit more solid and you know, you're actually in reality. And that is, let me see, it's basically like, well, I'll actually give you dates here. Let me get my little famous out. So that would be about May 10th through May 20th. That's going to be kind of the, especially kind of like the 15th through the 20th. And the reason I say that is because the sun will be trining that whole Capricorn party. So benefits of this are you have two solid earth energies trining each other in harmonious conversation with each other. That's what a trine means. And so there's a bit more of a like, you're actually here, your feet are actually on the ground, you have some semblance of seeing things for how they really are. May, 10th through I'll just say, I'll keep it kind of narrow, 15th through the 20th of May. But even that can have a bit of a negative, just to give you the full warning. So that sun energy in Taurus, if it's trining more of the negative energy of that Jupiter and Pluto, then, you're kind of like doubling down on the burn it all to the ground kind of energy, which benefits of that, you get clear. Like, you can get clear with that energy of what actually matters to you, of what actually is worth your time. You're taking off that gold-plated duct tape like I was talking about earlier. But the negatives of that are you can kind of like fall into a bit of a melancholy. So, but just to warn you. But I mentioned it so that you can have the positive of that, of it's a bit more of a, you can actually stand on your own 2 feet, have a bit more solid reality, May 15th through 20th. So if you absolutely have to make some really important decision and you can't just get lost in the fog of your own dreams all month, then May 15th through 20th would be the time to do it. Okay, and then my final announcement. If you enjoy these videos, if you enjoy learning about astrology, if you would like to learn a bit more about astrology, my year-long school just closed. I will open that back up in January, but I do have a workshop that I offer every once in a while. I'm trying to have it be somewhat seasonal. And so the next one will be July. So the registration closes July 3rd. The workshop itself is mid-July. And it's my crash course workshop, which is very fun. It's 4 hours on a Saturday. you learn your whole chart, and it's entirely through glue sticks and scissors and pictures and fill-in-the-blank sentences, like Mad Lib style fill-in-the-blank sentences. It's a ton of fun. You learn a ton about your chart. It is deceptively profound, and everyone loves it. So anyways, I wanted to mention that my next workshop registration closes July 3rd, and you can also learn more about that on my website, and I'll also have a link to it down below. Okay, once again, hour-long video. That's just what I do, apparently. If you have any questions about this, you can ask them below. And I wish you well in May, and go out there and enjoy yourself if you can. Remember that we are moving into an energy of curiosity and play with the North Node in Gemini, which will be a bit of a stretch because we're moving into it. We haven't totally embodied it yet. That's what we'll be doing for the next year and a half. And at the same time, if you have romance in your life, just enjoy yourself. Really dive into your own love and the love of, if you have a current partner, the love of your current partner. And use that Venus retrograde to its fullest to really come home of values, worth, and what you actually really want in this life. That's its end-all be-all goal. So that's my sum up for May. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all next month. Okay,